Hi guys, and welcome to TechFurb. Today we are doing something a little bit different. We are building a sim racing rig, so let's get into it. Absolutely. I know it's going to. Okay, so let's run through what's going on with this system. What we're doing here is we're trying to use the core crux of an OEM system and sort of upgrade it to be able to do gaming. So, the graphics card we've gone with is a Radeon RX 580. This particular model is an ASUS model. It's a dual fan model. There's nothing special about it, but it will do the job. The reason why we went with this particular model is it was on sale for $230 Australian at Umart. Which is a pretty bloody good deal for a 580. I could have gone with a 570, but I wanted that little bit extra performance that you get from the 580, and I also wanted that extra 4 gig of VRAM that it comes with. This is an 8 gig model, and for future proofing and just that nice little extra little bit, it was worth paying the extra $20 to $30 premium that it commanded. So that's why we went with the graphics card. As for power supply, it is a 600 watt Cooler Master model. It will be sufficient for what we're doing. It's an 80 plus certified model. It was the best bang for buck power supply I can get my hands on. Not cheapest. It sets you back about 70-ish Australian dollars, give or take. I forget the exact amount. 600 watts is more than enough for a RX 580. Probably more than enough for maybe a bit of a higher tier graphics card. But I find with power supplies, you always want to take what you need and then probably add another 100, 150 watts on the power supply over the top of that. Purely for overclocking headroom. It's just nice to have a little bit extra because you don't ever want to have to replace the power supply for the sake of upgrading another component. So it's just, we don't have to worry about it. That's why we went with the 600 watt. The other thing we will be swapping out is the storage. We will be going with a 240 gig SSD boot drive. It is a SATA 3 drive. Will be compatible with this system, and we also have a 2 terabyte mechanical hard drive for storage of said games and other things that want to be stored on it. Let's have a look at the computer. So the Lenovo system here, it's potentially compatible with the graphics card. That's not why I got it. The reason why I got it is because, one, it has an i7 2600, which I know is capable of pushing along an RX 580. It may bottleneck it in some situations, but the reality is it's a good match. It's a good pairing. The other reason I went with this particular model is it may potentially take the graphics card without a case swap, but this is the key thing here, that if you're thinking of doing this, this is what you need to consider for yourself. It can be case swapped. What I mean by that is, with a lot of OEMs and a lot of pre-builts, they have a lot of either weird connectors that are just not standard, not compatible with ATX, or they will have stupid little sensors, or there will be something where the heatsink will bolt to the case, or there'll be some obscure thing that is outside of the ATX spec, and it's one tiny unimportant thing, but the motherboard will have an absolute hissy fit if it does not have that thing, just because OEMs are terrible and I hate them so much. This build is for a mate that does drive a rally car for a bit of fun on the weekends. He can only drive it maybe 4 times a year, 5 times a year. It's not a regular thing for him, and he wanted to have a go at a racing simulator. Cost of racing simulator versus cost of rally car. This build is going to cost him maybe 1.5 tyres on his rally car, so I won't even buy him a set of tyres, which is ludicrous, but that's the reality of going rallying, I guess. He asked me if I could do a sim setup. I said, no problems. The deal was, if he lets me make a video on it, then I'll do it for him. So that's why we're doing this, and I guess we should probably start trying to put it together. ladies and gentlemen, so the build is done. I'm a little worried, purely because it went off without a hitch. Apart from the very minor issue with a bracket, which took all of 2 minutes to overcome, this was a straightforward build, which never happens with our EMPCs. Every single time I've done a Dell conversion or not a HP conversion, because HPs are shit. Anytime I've done a actually Ace is not too bad. But yeah, any OEM brand, yeah, I've had difficulties. But in this instance, I haven't. So let's see if that's all a false pretense and it doesn't power on. Well, let's just start. Oh, yeah, definitely an OEM PC. Auto powers on, which is fantastic. Well, that's not a good sign. I'm not getting a graphics output. I knew it wasn't too easy because it's not powering on, so I guess we've got to figure out what's going on with this guy. Okay, so as you can probably see, I've changed shirts. It is tomorrow in the timeline of this video, and I have found the problem. I didn't freak out, so step one when something like this happens is don't freak out. I purely just had to stop the video there because I needed to go to bed so I could go to work in the morning. But what happened, this obviously being the brand new graphics card here, what had happened is nothing had broken. Simply the BIOS on this machine was never updated. And what that means is it never had a UEFI mode available. So the BIOS was still a old school traditional, BIOS. I even forget the proper name from now. It's been that long. Anyway, long story short, it wasn't the legacy. It was running the legacy BIOS. So after installing Windows and just obviously taking a graphics card out, installing Windows on the SSD, I was able to go to the Lenovo website, download the correct BIOS, update the BIOS, and we are now at the point where I can plug the graphics card in. And hopefully it will work, because if it doesn't, then we need to come up with a completely new plan. But I'm fairly confident that was the cause of the problem, so theoretically we should be able to just slot the graphics card straight back in there, and we should see it work. Alrighty, take two. Let's see if we can fire it up and get that graphics card to detect this time. Well, back to the drawing board, I guess, on this one. Okay, so much troubleshooting has ensued. Basically, I've come to the conclusion of the Lenovo tower is just straight up not going to support that graphics card. So that is a severe level of frustration. So rather than put you guys through the torment of watching me build another computer, I'm going to build up this guy here, which you probably can't see on the camera very well, but basically this is a spare second gen machine I've had lying around. It's only got an i5 in it, but I'll strip out the i5, put in the i7 from the Lenovo, upgrade the RAM. Pretty much the only thing that will persist will pretty much be the case and power supply, and the rest of it will all be upgraded. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll be back. It's been a long freaking journey to get to this point, but we've done it. It's now been moved to a completely different system. ATX model, still a second gen board, but this is now an aftermarket board, so it just works. And we'll talk more about that in the conclusion to give you guys a bit of an idea. But I will plug this guy in and we'll turn it on, and I will see an output on that display, or you will see a very, very fantastic rage quit. So we'll see what happens. Here we go. Victory is mine, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, fantastic. 16 gig of RAM, i7 detected, 3 drives detected, including the DVD drive, which works. Let's install Windows and let's see how the racing sim goes on it. We've got the screen loaded up here, and I've got Fraps sitting up in the top right up here, which you should be, yeah, you can see there. It's probably not going to look amazing on the screen, but anyway, that's okay. We've set the settings as literally as high as they'll go. We're on ultra settings and pretty much every single slider that I can pull, you know, the TAA and all that sort of stuff, which I don't recommend doing because there's no point doing it, but I just want to stress this thing as hard as I can. The game we're running is Dirt Rally 2, which is probably the most intensive, you know, sim racing game I have. I know a lot of people might get their knickers in a knot over that, and saying, "Oh, Dirt Rally is not a sim game," but I don't care. It's close enough for me. Let's not get into that. That's a whole argument. Sim racing people probably hate me right now, but I don't care. So we're going to do a stage that I know reasonably well, because I spend way too much time playing this game when I get a chance. Here we go, Rockton Plains. Confirm. We're going to go with a 95 Impreza because I know how to drive that car in this game. Oh yeah, frame rate is, that looks good, but oh, that frame rate is hurting. We're making it bleed. Alright. Let's see how we go, ladies and gentlemen. I hate left-hand drive. Ooh. So yeah, we're getting about 30 frames per second now with settings cranked. So let's drop that down to 4x MSAA, that down to 4. Go apply that bad boy. And then let's just go high. Oh, that's a big accident. Well, I think it's a sufficient test. We rolled about 20 million times. We're getting a frame rate of 90 frames per second now. I'm pretty happy with this game. Maybe we should take a look at F1 20, it's a bit old now, but F1 2017 and see how that fares. Basically for this run, we are effectively doing ultra settings, 1080p, everything cranked again. F1 2017 being a little bit older now, the 580 absolutely crushes this game. Dirt Rally 2 being a very modern game, not so much the case. But it still fares well enough. It'll do the job, you know. And if the reality is, if you want the maximum graphical fidelity with the frame rate, you're spending a lot more money to get that. You're looking at 1660s and stuff like that, which is just another tier above the RX 580. So we're going to dive into F1 2017. I'm just going to do a bit of a race, and when I'm on a straight, I'm going to look at the frame rate and see what we're getting. Look at that, 80 frames per second, not bad. Oh, brake too early. Oh, that's it, we're broken the front wing. I gotta say, for all the trouble it's given me, this super budget sim racing build's worked out. And this is not playing older games, this is playing current gen titles. Yeah, I know F1 2017 is not current gen, but the reality is this is very similar to 2019. You'd be getting very similar frame rates. Dirt Rally 2, it is an easier game to run compared to AAA titles, but again, running it on high settings 1080p, you're looking at 80-90 frames per second again as well. And to be honest, high settings, the fidelity's there, you don't need anything more. Yeah, so all in all, I would say that this is a rip-roaring success. It's been a battle to get here, but I think my friend will be pleased with the outcome, considering the amount that he's spent is not all that much. So, I guess, for you guys watching this video, I've tried to encompass the adventure from start to finish. You know, this is the joy of me being able to now enjoy the setup that's being built. But I can tell you the pleasure of getting there was not fun. Building a second-hand gaming rig, if I had have started out without using the OEM PC, if I had have just, you know, went down the route that I ended up going down, where I grabbed an old gaming motherboard slotted in that i7 CPU, put the 16GB RAM in, the end result would have been painless and freaking awesome. But the reality is I chose to try and make the OEM route work, and it just didn't work. So, if you're thinking of using this video as a guide, my advice to you is pay the extra money to get an aftermarket gaming motherboard, something reasonably reputable from, you know, an Asus, a Gigabyte, an MSI, ASRock. I can't think of any other motherboard manufacturers off my top of my head. I'm sure there's more, but they're some of the main ones that you're going to be using. Get the motherboard. In terms of a CPU that you're going to want, if you're going second generation Intel, you're really wanting that i7. If you're not on an i7 2600, don't go second gen. Same for third gen as well. You might get a little bit more performance out of an i5 in third gen, but you really need to be going with an i7 2600 or an i7 3770 if you're going second or third gen Intel Core i series. If you're looking at an AMD platform, I wouldn't be touching anything older than Ryzen. If you're going to go on Intel, you're going to go 4th gen or newer. You're looking at an i5, so you could probably pick up a 1150 motherboard with an i5 processor. You don't have to get 16GB of RAM. It's a nice to have, but I would just recommend getting 16GB just because you don't have that bottleneck. It might cost you an extra $20-30, but it's just worth it. You probably, if you're doing this budget and you're pairing it with like a $3,000 or $4,000 sim racing rig, I wouldn't go down that route. I would look at buying brand new computer parts. You're looking at probably an AMD Ryzen 3600 platform if you're going to go for a high-end sim setup. But for, you know, you're working with a G27 or even a G29, honestly, RX 580, or if you can afford to spend a little bit more, maybe a 1660, it'll do you fine. That'll do the job. So, that is my thoughts. That is my conclusion. Sorry, it's a little bit of a longer video, but I wanted this video to be informative to people, not just look at this cool thing I built. I want people to see, you know, the dark side of building a second-hand computer, not just the magical YouTube highly edited version where it all just magically works, because that never happens with a second-hand PC. You either need to know what you're doing or know someone who knows what they're doing to make it work. But anyway, I'm rambling at this point. If you like this video, give it a like. If you dislike this video, you can do that. Comments down below if you've got any questions for me. If you're thinking of building a sim rig, having said that, I don't actually monitor YouTube comments after, you know, maybe a month or two of the video being released, just because it's very difficult to do so. So generally, if you want to get in touch with me and have a good conversation with me, check out the Discord link in the description below. I do actively monitor the Discord server, and I generally reply within a day or two max. Sometimes I'll reply same day, but it really depends on what's going on in my world. And yeah, that's what I got for you guys. Get subscribed if you're not subscribed. If you want a notification when a video comes out, hit the notification button. And I will catch you guys in the next video.